Hello, horror listeners. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button for the channel. Also, make sure to tell us in the comments how you like the story and from where you are watching or listening. If you want to hear any specific story, feel free to request it. Now let's begin the story. I was 17 when I got my first real job. It wasn't glamorous, but in my small town, work never was. My name is Rachel Torres, and I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, the kind of place people joke about as a drive-through town. We had strip malls, empty parking lots, and a Walmart that was somehow always packed no matter the time of day. When senior year rolled around, my parents told me it was time to start pulling my weight. Gas money, prom dress savings, little things they didn't want to keep covering. So I applied at the Burger King off Route 48, the one squeezed between a dying laundromat and a shuttered Blockbuster. I figured it'd be easy. Flip burgers, smile at cranky customers, maybe sneak a few fries during closing shifts. I didn't know then that the place would end up teaching me more about fear than responsibility. The first few months blurred together in a haze of fryer grease and ketchup packets. The uniform smelled like onions no matter how many times I washed it. Kids screamed, customers complained about cold nuggets, and managers barked about drive-through times like it was life or death. But the money was steady, and there was a weird comfort in routine. Filling sodas, punching in orders, asking the same medium or large 100 times a day. Most people pass through unnoticed, just faces, cash, and orders. But some stuck in your mind. The drunk guy who fell asleep at the counter, the mom who ordered 10 kids' meals and tipped with nickels, the truck driver who told too many dirty jokes. And then there was him. It was a Saturday in late February. Snow was still piled in dirty mounds by the curbs, and the wind cut sharp when the doors swung open. I was on front counter, running autopilot through the lunch rush. Around 1:15 p.m., he walked in. He wasn't anyone you'd notice twice. Average height, early 40s maybe, short brown hair, stubble that looked a few days old. He wore a dark green hoodie, faded jeans, and tan boots that left wet prints across the tile. He ordered like anyone else. A Whopper combo, large, with a Coke. Nothing unusual. But when I handed him the receipt, our fingers brushed, and he smiled too long. "You've got a nice smile," he said. His voice was low, smooth in a way that made my stomach knot. "Bet you hear that a lot." I gave a polite laugh, like I'd been trained. "Thanks." "I mean it," he added, leaning in just slightly. "You seem like someone who enjoys talking to people." I stepped back half an inch. "I try." He went to a booth in the far corner, under the flickering light we always meant to fix. For the next 20 minutes, while I rang up orders and handed out trays, I felt his eyes on me. Not a full-on stare, but whenever I looked up, he was watching. When he finished eating, he carried his tray up, something most people never did. He dropped it on the counter, smiled again. "Take care, Rachel," he said. I froze. "How do you—" He tapped my name tag. "Right there." "Oh, right. Have a good one." He left. I told myself it was nothing. Just a weird guy. Nothing more. My shift ended at 5 o'clock. I tossed my hoodie over the uniform, drove the 10 minutes back to our neighborhood, a quiet cul-de-sac where kids left bikes in driveways and no one locked their doors until bedtime. My parents and little brother were at a movie, so the house was dark. I microwaved leftover spaghetti, scrolled TikTok with the volume low. Normal, comfortable. Then came the knock. Not the cheerful, 3 quick taps kind of knock. Slow, deliberate, heavy. I froze, phone in hand. We didn't get unexpected visitors, especially not after dark. Heart pounding, I crept to the front window, tugged the curtain just enough to see. It was him, the man in the green hoodie. He was standing on the porch, hands in his pockets, looking right at the doorbell. I cracked the door open, leaving the chain latched. "Can I help you?" My voice shook. His face lit up like we were old friends. "Hey, Rachel. Didn't think you'd remember me. What are you doing here?" He shrugged, casual. "Just thought we had a good conversation earlier. Figured I'd stop by, see if you wanted to hang out." "Hang out?" My throat went dry. "I don't even know you." "You know me a little." He gestured toward the street. "My car's right there. We could grab food, go for a drive." "No pressure," I glanced. A silver sedan idled a few houses down, headlights off but engine running. He had followed me. "You need to leave," I said, trying to sound firm. He gave a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Don't be like that." I slammed the door and threw the locks. Through the window, I watched him walk back to the sedan, head down. He climbed in but didn't drive away. He just sat there. The glow of the dashboard lit his face faintly, a silhouette waiting, watching. I texted my mom. "When are you guys coming home?" She replied, "Movie just ended. 10 to 15 minutes. Why? I didn't want to worry her. Just wondering. I turned off every light in the house, crouched behind the couch. The heater clicked, wood creaked, and every sound felt like it might give me away. 15 minutes stretched to 30. He didn't move. Then headlights swept across the front window. My parents' SUV pulled into the driveway. I bolted to the door, yanked it open, ran outside. "Rachel, what's wrong?" my mom asked, alarmed. "There's a guy," I stammered. "He's been sitting in his car down the street." He came to the door. My dad didn't ask questions. He marched straight toward the sedan. As soon as he crossed the yard, the engine revved. Tires crunched over snow as the car sped off, vanishing around the corner. We called the police. My dad filed a report. A cruiser circled the block twice, then left. Nothing came of it. The man never came back. I worked 2 more shifts at Burger King before quitting. Told my manager I needed to focus on school. I didn't mention the man, but I never stopped thinking about it. He remembered me out of hundreds of faces, followed me home, knocked on my door like it was nothing. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd opened the door wider, or if my family had come home 10 minutes later. It's easy to forget how close danger can be. Sometimes it's just standing across the counter, smiling like it belongs there. Story 2. I was 20 years old when everything went sideways. Back then, I lived in Meriden, Pennsylvania, a once thriving steel town that now felt like the world had quietly moved on without it. The factories had gone cold years before, but the skeletons of industry were everywhere. Rusted warehouses, busted smokestacks, train tracks that led nowhere. It was the kind of place where winters felt twice as long because the cold wind whipped through hollow buildings and echoed like ghosts screaming at you. I was broke, bone deep broke. My mom had passed when I was 16, my dad bailed before I even knew his name, and my sister moved 2 states away. That left me scraping by on what little I could earn. I was enrolled in a small trade school trying to become a welder. Tuition drained most of what I had, and I swore I wouldn't take on loans. I didn't want chains around my neck for the next 40 years, so I worked whatever I could find, painting fences, moving furniture, digging ditches. Nothing lasted. My break came from my Uncle Frankie, a man with more connections than friends. He got me a slot on a demolition crew through a buddy who owed him a favor. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. The job was in the heart of Meriden, tearing down a row of condemned buildings along Jefferson Avenue, an old medical office, a shoe repair shop, and a string of boarded-up restaurants. I replaced a guy named Raymond. Word around the crew was he slipped on an icy ledge without a harness, shattered both arms, and would be in a cast until summer. The foreman, Cal, told me straight, "Don't be a cowboy out here, kid. You cut corners, you'll get cut right out of the picture. Got it?" "Got it," I told him, trying to sound tougher than I felt. My first day was February 10th. I remember because the air felt sharp, like the cold itself had teeth. My breath smoked out in front of me, hanging heavy in the gray light. Cal barked orders, and the older guys just grunted, working in silence. The younger ones, like me, mostly kept their heads down. We were breaking down the top floors first. Concrete chunks, metal beams, drywall full of ancient dust. It all went down chutes into dumpsters. My hands blistered under my gloves before lunch, but the pay promised survival. Because of a blizzard that had shut the city down for 3 days, Cal pushed us hard. Overtime, straight into the night. By the time he cut us loose, it was past 11:30 p.m., and Meriden was buried in another swirl of snow. I was starving, the kind of hunger where your stomach feels like it's eating itself alive. Most of the crew jumped into their trucks and disappeared into the night. I trudged across Jefferson, boots crunching on frozen gravel. That's when I saw it, a Burger King, sitting alone between a shuttered hair salon and an old tax prep place with boarded-up windows. The big sign buzzed faintly, red and brown letters glowing weak against the storm. A neon open flickered in the front window. It looked out of place, alive almost. I hesitated. I'd passed Jefferson plenty of times before, and I didn't remember ever seeing this Burger King lit up. But hunger won. I pushed inside. The place was dim, lit only by the amber glow of heat lamps behind the counter. The air smelled like fryer oil mixed with something metallic, almost like pennies or blood. Every booth sat empty, layered in dust thick enough to write your name in. Behind the counter stood a thin kid in a black Burger King uniform. Pale face, acne scars, dull gray eyes. His name tag read MILO. "You guys still open?" I asked, voice cracking from the cold. He nodded once. The movement was stiff, puppet-like. "Gas works. Fryers work. What do you want?" Whopper meal. No onions. Large Coke." He blinked slow. "Okay." I reached for my wallet, but he lifted a hand. "Registers down. On the house." That should have set off alarms in my head, but I was too cold and too hungry. I muttered a quick thanks and stepped aside. Milo disappeared into the back. The hiss of a fryer came next, oil snapping loud. Then, another sound. A low growl, muffled and wet, not like any human voice. My ears strained. Words, maybe? Couldn't make them out. A shadow shifted near the kitchen doorway. Tall, bent at the waist, arms too long. A pale hand, twisted like tree roots, slid forward and passed a paper bag to Milo. He reappeared holding it out. "Here you go." His tone never changed. I took it. The bag was warm, grease bleeding through. The Coke felt cold and real in my other hand. I slid into a booth near the window. The tabletop was sticky, streaked with something reddish-brown. I wiped it with a napkin, assuming it was old ketchup. The fries were fresh, perfectly salted. The Whopper? The best I'd ever tasted. Smoky, juicy, almost too good. I devoured it, shoving away the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. When I finished, Milo was gone. Just gone. The counter stood empty. I walked out into the storm, stuffed and exhausted, trudged to the bus stop. A few others were waiting. An old woman in pearls, a nurse in scrubs, and a kid bundled like a snowman. They looked at me, then away quickly. The bus arrived, nearly empty. Inside, I noticed it. People kept sneaking glances at me. The old woman clutched her purse tighter. The nurse shifted to another seat. Even the driver kept checking the mirror. I figured maybe I stank from the demo job, until I got home. Peeling off my coat, I froze. My undershirt was stained red, thick streaks across my chest. My hands shook as I ran to the bathroom and flicked on the light. Blood coated my mouth, down my chin, onto my collar, dried and fresh both. My teeth were clean, my gums untouched. No cuts, no reason, just blood. I scrubbed myself raw, changed clothes, tried to push it down. Maybe it was ketchup. Maybe I'd had a nosebleed. Maybe I was too tired to know straight. The next day, curiosity pulled me back. The Burger King? Closed, completely abandoned. Boards on the windows, snow undisturbed in the lot, the open sign dark. At break, I mentioned it to Leo, one of the crew. "You talking about that Burger King on Jefferson?" he asked. "Yeah, I ate there last night." He gave me a look. "No, you didn't. That place shut down 2 years ago. Health department nailed them. Rumor was they found stuff, bones in the grease trap. People went missing." I laughed it off. "Come on," Leo didn't smile. "You'll see. We're tearing it down next week," and we did. Inside, it looked nothing like the night I ate there. Dust coated everything. Fryers rusted, counters rotten. The smell hit us hardest. Sour meat and wet copper, like a slaughterhouse had been left to rot. In the basement freezers? Let's just say it wasn't beef. Cops came, sealed it up. Hazmat moved in. Cal told us never to talk about it. But I remember. The shadow in the back, the pale hand, Milo's dead eyes, and the taste of that Whopper, smoky and perfect, still lingering on my tongue. I haven't touched fast food since. Last week, I got a call from an unknown number. A calm voice said they worked with a special security firm that monitored unusual commercial properties. They mentioned Meriton, the demolitions, and said they needed someone like me. I hung up. But at night, when the snow drifts down and the streets go quiet, I can't stop thinking, how many other towns have places like that? Places boarded up, waiting. Places where the fryers still hiss, even when nobody alive turns them on. And sometimes when the wind howls outside my window, I swear I hear it, that low growl and the fryer oil popping. Story 3. I never thought something as simple as grabbing dinner would leave me shaken for months. It happened last summer, early June, when the heat in Alabama was already brutal enough to make the steering wheel in my car feel like it could melt skin. My name's Rachel Carter. I was 26 at the time, living alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Montgomery, about 15 minutes from my job. Back then, I worked as a cashier at an auto parts warehouse. The shifts were long, the pay wasn't much, and dealing with cranky mechanics every day wore me down. That day had been especially bad. We were short-staffed, so I skipped lunch to cover for a coworker, and by the time I clocked out around 3 p.m., I was exhausted, sweaty, and starving. There was a Burger King on the corner of Perry Hill Road, wedged between a laundromat and an old pawn shop. It wasn't my favorite place, but it was on the way home and easy enough to grab something quick. My plan was simple. Whopper meal, drive back to my apartment, shower, and collapse on the couch. I had no idea I was about to walk into one of the most disturbing encounters of my life. The lot was half full when I pulled in. Sunlight bounced off car hoods, and the air shimmered in the heat. Inside, I could already see people moving around. The blur of uniforms, families wrangling kids, and workers in scrubs waiting on food. I pushed the door open, and the smell of fries and grease wrapped around me. The air conditioning struggled to keep up. Ceiling fans buzzed lazily above. There were about 8 people ahead of me in line. I sighed, shifted my weight, and pulled out my phone. The employees were clearly overwhelmed. Orders being shouted, fryer baskets hissing, the beeping of machines. At the counter, a young woman with a messy bun tried to manage 2 registers while calling out order numbers. Behind her, another guy in a headset looked like he was ready to collapse. When it was my turn, a skinny teenager with dark circles under his eyes scanned me with a blank expression. His name tag read, Marcus. "Welcome to Burger King. What can I get you?" His voice was flat, robotic. "Just a Whopper meal, no onions. And a Coke, please," I said, forcing a polite smile. He tapped the screen. "That'll be $9.43. I slid my card, thanked him, and stepped aside to wait. About 5 minutes later, my order number lit up on the screen, 172. A tall man with broad shoulders and a trim beard walked up from the back. His name tag read, Brian. He held the bag out to me without a smile. "Order 172, he said. "Thanks," I replied automatically, taking it from him. I turned toward the exit, already thinking about the drive home. That's when I noticed my left shoelace dragging. I didn't want to trip in the lot, so I sat down at an empty 2-top table near the door, set my bag down, crouched, and tied it. When I stood, Brian was right there, not behind the counter anymore, standing barely a foot away from me. "You didn't say thank you." His voice was low, steady. I blinked. I did. I thought I did." He shook his head slowly. "No, you didn't." Heat rushed to my face. "I'm sorry. Thank you. Really, I thought I said it." His lips tightened. "Too late. That's not how this works." Before I could react, he snatched the bag off the table so hard the napkins fluttered. My jaw dropped. "Wait, what are you doing?" Without answering, he walked 3 steps to the trash can and shoved the bag inside, smashing it down with his fist. I froze. "What the hell? I paid for that." He turned back to me, eyes sharp, voice raised now so people started looking. "Next time, treat people like human beings, not trash." I stood there in disbelief. My chest burned with embarrassment as a couple of teenagers by the soda machine whispered to each other, and a mother tugged her kid closer. Finally, I walked back to the counter, heart racing. A short woman in a red visor glanced at me nervously. Hi, one of your employees just threw away my food." My voice cracked. "What?" She frowned. The tall guy with the beard. He said I didn't thank him, got mad, and dumped my bag in the trash. Her expression shifted instantly. Recognition, then discomfort. Brian? I think that was his name. She sighed, lowering her voice. Yeah, I'm sorry. He's had issues before. My stomach nodded. So this isn't the first time? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, I'll get your food remade, don't worry. I nodded, relieved. Thank you. I appreciate it. But before she could even punch the screen, Brian stormed back out from the kitchen. His eyes locked on me, face darkening. What's she doing? He barked. She's just, the woman began. No, she's not, he snapped. She's banned. I told her to leave. I stepped back, stunned. Banned? For what? I didn't do anything except ask for my food. You disrespected me, he growled. You don't get to stay here. The woman's hands fidgeted. She looked torn. I raised both palms. Look, I'm not trying to make a scene. Forget the food, I'll just go. My voice shook. Brian's jaw clenched. He took a step closer. That was enough. I grabbed my bag from the floor, not food, just my purse, and walked quickly to the exit. I was halfway to my car when the door banged open behind me. Hey! Brian's voice boomed. I turned. He was following me into the lot, shoulders squared, fists tight. You got something to say? Say it to my face. My pulse hammered. I already did. I said I was sorry. You think you can walk in here, treat me like garbage, then run? He kept coming closer. You're harassing me now, I said firmly. Back off. He didn't stop. I'll do more than that if you keep running your mouth. I fumbled with my keys, yanked my door open, and slid inside. If you come any closer, I'm calling the police. He stopped about 10 feet from my bumper, both middle fingers raised, face red with rage. You're lucky I'm on the clock. I slammed the locks down, started the car, and backed out. My hands shook so badly I could barely steer. In the mirror, he stood there glaring as I pulled away. That night, I filed a complaint through Burger King's corporate website, detailing everything. I even included the time, date, and store number. Weeks later, I got a generic email. We are reviewing the situation. Thank you for your feedback. That was it. No phone call, no apology, nothing. I never went back to that Burger King. In fact, every time I see the logo now, my stomach twists. Not because of the food, but because someone wearing that uniform thought it was okay to humiliate me in front of strangers, to throw away something I paid for, to follow me outside and threaten me. It wasn't a ghost story, it wasn't supernatural, but it was terrifying in its own way. Because sometimes the real horror isn't in haunted houses or dark alleys, it's in the everyday people who let their anger spiral into something dangerous. Story 4, I was 16 when it happened. A junior at Lincoln Falls High School, just outside a small, overlooked town in southern Indiana that people usually drove past on their way to bigger places. We weren't known for much except a half-dead mall, a Walmart that was always full, and a Burger King that sat right across from the community library, which ironically had been closed for years because of budget cuts. For me, basketball was everything. I wasn't the star player or anything, but being on the varsity practice squad gave me purpose. It was discipline, something that made the endless homework and long days a little easier. Plus, it was a good excuse to stay at school late, so I didn't have to go straight home. Home wasn't terrible, but my dad worked nights at the steel plant by the river, and my mom worked double shifts at the hospital. Most nights, it felt like just me and my little brother eating leftovers in front of the TV. Because the school only had 2 gyms and way too many teams, practices rotated. Some days we had the early slot. Other nights we were stuck with the late one, 7 to 9:30 p.m. That Thursday was one of the late ones, and I'll never forget it. Coach had been in a mood, screaming about effort and making us run suicides until my lungs felt like they'd collapse. My shirt was drenched, my legs burned, and when we wrapped early around 8:40, I felt both relieved and dead tired. The relief didn't last. Mom wasn't picking me up until 9:30. My phone, useless. The data had run out days earlier, and I couldn't even get a single bar of service. The school Wi-Fi, which I'd been relying on, was locked. They'd changed the password again. That was their new thing, making everything harder, like we were prisoners instead of students. So I was stuck outside the gym in the cold March air, backpack slung over my shoulder, with no way to tell my mom I was done early. That's when I remembered the Burger King across the street. It wasn't fancy, just another tired-looking fast food joint with flickering lights and a broken drive-through speaker, but it had Wi-Fi and burgers. And right then, that was enough. I decided to walk over. It wasn't far. I cut across the dimly lit football field, hopped the fence, and crossed the near-empty road. The parking lot was mostly deserted except for a beat-up silver sedan near the back and a lone pickup closer to the door. Inside, I could see the dull glow of fluorescent lights. When I pushed open the glass door, the weak ding of the bell overhead made my stomach twist. The place smelled of grease and burnt fryer oil. The soda machine wheezed like it was dying. The floor tiles looked older than me. A bored-looking girl, probably in her late 20s, appeared from the back when I cleared my throat. Hey, I said awkwardly. She just raised her eyebrows. Can I get a cheeseburger and a small Sprite? I asked. She rang me up without a word. I handed her a few crumpled dollars, grabbed my tray, and walked toward the dining area. That's when I noticed him. In the far corner, half hidden in shadow, a man sat alone. Hood pulled low, greasy hair spilling out. His elbows rested on the table, his hands cupping his face. For a second, I thought he might have been crying. Or maybe sleeping. I didn't stare. Places like this always had strange people late at night. I picked a booth by the window, close enough to see the parking lot in case Mom showed up early. I set my tray down, pulled out my phone, and connected to the Wi-Fi. I sent the text immediately. Me. Practice ended early. Can you come now? I'm at Burger King. Mom's reply came almost instantly. Mom. On my way. Be there in 15. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding, took a bite of my lukewarm burger, and tried to relax. That's when I heard it, the scrape of a chair against the tile. I looked up. The man in the hoodie was standing now. He was taller than I expected, thin, lanky, his jeans were filthy, and the weirdest part, he was wearing sunglasses. At night, inside. He didn't look at me at first, just stared straight ahead like he was gathering himself. Then slowly, he turned and walked directly toward me. My stomach dropped. Maybe he's just going to the bathroom, I thought. But no. He passed empty booths one by one until he slid into the seat across from me. My throat went dry. Hey, I managed, forcing a nervous smile. How's it going? Silence. He just sat there, breathing slow and steady. The sunglasses hid his eyes completely. His greasy hair hung over his face. I glanced toward the counter. The cashier had disappeared again. I'm, actually waiting for my mom, I said louder. She'll be here soon. Still nothing. No nod. No words. My palms were sweaty. My knees bounced under the table. Finally, I stood, voice shaking. Well, nice talking to you. Have a good night. I grabbed my backpack and walked toward the door as casually as I could manage. My heart hammered. My legs trembled. The ding of the doorbell as I stepped outside was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Cool air hit my face. I walked fast, cutting back toward the school. I made the mistake of looking behind me. He had followed me out. At first, I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe he was heading to the gas station. Maybe to the car parked in the back. But every turn I made, he made too. Every time I sped up, he matched me. Always about 50 feet behind. Never closer, never farther. When I reached the school, the doors were locked. The building was dark, silent. Panic rose like bile in my throat. I circled the building. No janitors, no coaches, nobody. I glanced back. He was still coming. Same pace, same steady, relentless steps. I jogged. Then I sprinted. My lungs screamed. My backpack thudded against my shoulders. When I looped back around to the front, headlights finally cut through the darkness. My mom's car, pulling into the Burger King lot across the street. Relief surged through me like fire. I bolted. "Mom!" I screamed, waving my arms. She hit the brakes as I tore across the intersection, my shoes slapping pavement. I yanked the passenger door open, threw myself inside, and slammed it shut. "Drive!" I gasped. "Please, just drive!" My mom didn't even ask why. She saw my face, pale and shaking, and hit the gas. As we pulled out, I glanced back. He had reached the edge of the lot, still walking, still steady. He stopped under the streetlight, watching as we drove away. His figure shrank in the rearview mirror, swallowed by shadows. I never saw him again. Never heard anything in the news. No reports, no arrests. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I think back to that booth in Burger King, the way he sat there silently across from me, the way his sunglasses hid everything, the way he followed, unhurried, like he knew he didn't need to rush. And I wonder, what would have happened if my mom had been just 5 minutes later? I'll never know. Story 5, I never thought I'd be standing behind a fast food counter again. Not after Wichita, not after the things I'd seen there. The long shifts, the grease burns, the humiliation of customers screaming at you like you weren't human. I told myself I'd never go back. But life doesn't care about what you swore you'd never do. 2 months behind on rent, a car that wouldn't start, and a landlord who'd already taped one eviction warning to my door. I didn't have the luxury of choice anymore. The factory job I'd been promised fell through, and my savings had dried up faster than the Louisiana summer rain. So when the burger barn off Highway 61, about 20 minutes outside Monroe, called me back the same day I applied, I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. My name is Derek Lawson, 26, high school dropout. No family left to call. My mom disappeared when I was 10. My dad drank himself to death before I was 18. Since then, I've been floating job to job, couch to couch. Last year, I thought I had some stability, a girlfriend, an apartment, a plan. But then she packed her things in silence one morning and left. And with her went the illusion that I had built something resembling a life. The bills stacked high, nights got longer, and the silence of that apartment grew so heavy it made it hard to breathe. That's the frame of mind I was in when I stepped into Burger Barn. The air smelled like fryer oil and disinfectant. The neon crown logo above the counter flickered like a broken halo. And there, standing behind the register, was Stan, the manager. Stan was in his late 40s, wiry, with jittery hands and permanent bags under his eyes. He smelled faintly of grease, as if it had seeped into his skin. But his voice was kind enough when he said, "Night shift's yours if you want it. 6 to 3. Most nights you'll see maybe 3 customers. Tops. Just keep the place clean, don't fall asleep, and lock up after close. Simple as that." I nodded, grateful and ashamed at the same time. I'll take it. The first nights passed without incident. A couple of long-haul truckers grabbing coffee, a tired family on their way to Florida, a group of teenagers filming TikToks in the drive-thru. For the most part, it was just me, the hum of the soda machine, the low hiss of the fryers, and an old radio playing static-filled country songs in the kitchen. The silence didn't bother me. If anything, it was easier than people. By the end of the week, I'd started convincing myself it wouldn't be so bad. Just temporary. Just until I got back on my feet. Then came Saturday night in late June. All day the air had been heavy, swollen. By evening, thunder grumbled in the distance like a restless giant. The sky turned purple and gray, clouds stacked like bruises. By 11:30 p.m., Stan was yawning as he counted the till. "Storm will keep the roads empty tonight," he said, jangling his car keys. "Lucky me," I muttered, tugging my sweat-soaked shirt from my back. He paused at the door. "You sure you're good being out here alone?" "Yeah," I lied. "Quieter the better." He gave me a long look, then left. I watched his headlights vanish into the curtain of highway darkness. By midnight, the Burger Barn was silent. Even the drink machine seemed too loud. I leaned on the counter, staring out into the black, the neon crown buzzing faintly above. That's when I heard it. A truck screamed past, its engine howling like an animal in pain. Then came a sickening thud, followed by silence. Curiosity dragged me outside into the thick, suffocating air. 30 feet down the road, I saw it. A fox, or what was left of one. Its belly was ripped open, intestines spilling across the asphalt like wet ropes. I grimaced and nudged it off the road with my boot. "Sorry, little guy," I muttered. When I turned back toward the diner, my chest froze. There was someone inside. Through the glass door, a man stood at the counter. His outfit looked like a cheap parody of royalty. An oversized plastic mask molded into a frozen grin, a gaudy crown, and a stained velvet robe. The bell chimed when I stepped back in. He turned his head slowly toward me. His voice was deep, metallic, unnatural. "I thought everybody died here." I blinked. "What?" He chuckled, low and rattling. "I thought this place was abandoned." "Guess not. Lucky me." I forced a thin smile. "So, what can I get you?" He stepped closer, boots heavy on tile. "Fries, double cheeseburger, large cola." He tilted his head. "And maybe the keys to your kingdom, peasant." I stared. "The restroom's unlocked." He nodded gravely, then drifted into the bathroom. I tried to shake it off. Weird customers were part of the job. Some lonely guy with a costume and a twisted sense of humor. Nothing new out here. I made his food, laid it on a tray, and waited. 15 minutes. No sign of him. Finally, I knocked on the bathroom door. "Hey, your food's ready." No answer. The door creaked open. He stepped out. But something was wrong. His eyes were bloodshot, his lips raw like chewed meat. A rank, sour odor clung to him. Without a word, he slid into a corner booth, unwrapped the burger. Then, with a grin that turned my stomach, he reached into his robe and pulled out a bundle of bloody entrails. My breath caught. "What the hell is that?" He looked up calmly. "The king's special meal." That's a dead animal," I stammered. "Roadkill," he corrected, smiling wider. "Fresh. Delicious." Before I could move, he lifted the bun and stuffed the entrails inside, then bit into it greedily. Sloppy, wet chewing. He finished the burger in less than a minute, licking blood from his lips in long, exaggerated strokes. I gagged, bolted into the bathroom, and vomited into the sink. That's when I noticed it. Blood circling the drain, dried clots stuck to the porcelain. He'd washed the guts here. My hands shook as I stumbled back into the lobby. A loud bang outside. A car alarm shrieked into the storm. I looked through the glass doors. A blue sedan had smashed into a tree on the shoulder. The driver's door hung open. And there he was, the mascot standing beside the wreck. I rushed forward cautiously. Inside the car, a woman slumped over the wheel. Blonde, late 20s, face ruined from the crash. Blood everywhere. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. The man turned to me. His mouth was smeared crimson. His voice dropped to a hush. "I've never tasted human roadkill. Maybe it's time to try something new." Then he leaned into the car and began lapping blood from her broken face. I screamed. The ground spun. Darkness swallowed me. When I opened my eyes, red and blue lights flashed. An EMT hovered above me. "She's waking up." A cop leaned down. "Ma'am, I need you to talk to us." "Do you work here?" I nodded weakly. "Yes, I work here." "Do you know who killed this woman?" "Killed? Number. She crashed. She—" The officer's jaw tightened. "Then why is half her face missing?" I stumbled toward the wreck. One look inside nearly dropped me to my knees. Her face wasn't just broken. It had been eaten. I told them everything. The man in the costume, the entrails, the crash. They pulled the security tapes. And there he was. The footage showed him entering, ordering, eating, disappearing into the storm. The final frame, him turning to the camera, raising one bloody hand and waving. They searched the woods behind the diner, found nothing but his mask tossed in the dirt. I still work the night shift sometimes, but never alone. Not anymore. Because I know he's still out there. And kings, they always come back for their crown. Story 6. I used to think hitting bottom was just an expression, something people said when their lives spiraled and they wanted it to sound meaningful. But then it happened to me. Not the poetic kind of bottom where you learn a life lesson and post about it online, but the ugly, stripped-bare version, the kind that leaves your pride shredded and your sense of self tangled up in polyester uniforms and fryer grease. Before everything collapsed, I was the girl people envied. Summers at a lake house in New Hampshire, ski trips to Vail in the winter, my dad running a private equity firm out of New York City, and my mom redecorating our house every other year like it was her full-time job. We lived in a gated community in Greenwich, Connecticut. I went to Hathaway Prep, one of those old money schools where the gymnasium was older than the country itself, and everyone pretended money didn't matter, even though it was the only thing that mattered. Then 2008 hit. I still remember the phone call that ripped everything apart. I was halfway through my sophomore year at Brenton College, standing in line at a campus cafe with a smoothie in one hand and overpriced ramen in the other, when my mom called sobbing. The firm was gone. My tuition payments were gone. The house had to be sold. My dad, once this unshakable figure in a tailored suit, sounded like a stranger on the other end of the line. 2 weeks later, I was packing boxes, loading them into a rental truck, and moving into my aunt's house in Millhaven, a sleepy Connecticut suburb no one ever hears about unless they get lost off I-95. I went from polished prep school girl to a 20-year-old with no degree, no money, and a future that suddenly looked like a blank wall. That's how I ended up at Burger King. At first, it was humiliating. I'd never worked a day in my life. I didn't even know how to make change without the register prompting me. The crew noticed immediately. Too clean, too soft, too clueless. But after a few months of double shifts, blisters on my feet, crying in the walk-in after rude customers snapped at me, I started to toughen up, and slowly, the crew warmed to me. There was Alex, the quiet shift lead who'd been in the Army before this job. He never wasted words, but when he smiled, it was real. There was Serena, sarcastic but sweet underneath, who ran the register, and Luis, the fry cook, who swore too much but had a heart of gold. The Friday late shifts were the worst. We closed at midnight, but cleaning dragged until 1 or 2. That's when strange people wandered in. Drunks, loners, sometimes guys who gave you the creeps. Still, nothing prepared me for the night the man in the hoodie walked through the door. It was a little after 11:30. The lobby was empty except for the hum of an overhead light that wouldn't stop flickering. I was wiping down the grill when the bell over the door chimed. He walked in slowly. Average height, maybe late 30s, wearing a weathered black hoodie and jeans. Nothing about him stood out, at first. "Welcome to Burger King," Serena called from the register, her usual chipper voice echoing in the empty lobby. "What can I get you tonight?" The man stared at the glowing menu board for a few seconds, lips moving slightly like he was rehearsing the words. Finally, he said, "2 double cheeseburgers, please." "Sure thing," Serena replied, punching it into the register. I turned to grab the buns, but then he added, "Could I get those without the bun?" "And no cheese, no bacon either," Serena frowned. "So, just the beef patties?" "Correct," he said evenly. "And actually, can you not grill them?" "I'd like them raw." The air in the lobby shifted. Serena blinked at him, caught off guard. "I'm sorry. Did you say raw?" "Yes," he replied. His voice was calm, almost polite. "I want the patties just as they are." No heat, Serena turned to me, wide-eyed. It wasn't the kind of request you misheard. I stepped forward, trying to sound gentle but firm. "Sir, we're not allowed to serve raw meat. It's against health code." That's when he looked at me, his eyes. God, I'll never forget them. Pale, cloudy, like something vital had been drained away. It wasn't threatening, not exactly, but it wasn't right either. "You've heard of steak tartare, haven't you?" he asked softly. "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. "But this isn't that. This is Burger King. We cook everything." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Is there a manager I could speak to?" Alex must have been listening from the back because he appeared at my side like a shadow. "I'm the shift lead," he said evenly. "And she's right. We can't serve raw meat." The man let out a faint sigh, then reached into his pocket. Smooth as anything, he pulled out a folded stack of crisp bills. Hundreds. At least $1,000. "How much would it take?" he asked. The room froze. Luis stopped scooping fries. Serena's hand stilled on the register. I felt my stomach drop. "Check the cooler," Alex said suddenly, low and clipped. That was code. "Leave the lobby. Now." I obeyed, ducking into the walk-in freezer. I stayed close to the door, though, listening. A few minutes passed in muffled silence. Then Alex came in, face unreadable. He shoved something into my hand. $300 bills. "This never happened," he said, and walked out. I stared at the money, my pulse hammering. He'd given it to him. Later, when I stepped outside for air, I saw the man sitting in a beat-up gray Camry in the parking lot, the engine idling. He unwrapped the paper bag. Inside, blood-soaked patties glistened under the light. He didn't eat them. He held one to his face, inhaling deeply like it was the finest perfume, eyes closed in something close to ecstasy. I must have leaned forward without realizing, because suddenly his eyes snapped open and locked on mine through the glass. He didn't move at first, just stared. Then the switch flipped. Engine roared, tires screeched, and he tore out of the lot, the bloody wrapper still clutched in his hand. I stumbled back inside, heart slamming. "Alex," I gasped. He wasn't eating it. He was smelling it. Like, like it was something else. Something wrong. He grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "You say nothing. Not to management. Not to corporate. Not to anyone. You like having a job?" I nodded, terrified. And just like that, it was over. Or it should have been, but it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, strange things kept happening. Late-night phone calls, silence on the other end. Once Luis swore someone left a wrapper soaked in blood at the drive-through window. Another time, Serena found a raw patty outside the back door, half bitten. No one believed her, but I did. Then 2 months later, Alex quit. No notice, just gone. The manager said it was a family emergency. But when I checked his locker, everything was cleared out, except for a single photograph. A young woman, maybe early 20s, smiling bright. On the back in shaky handwriting, she asked too many questions. I don't know who that man was. I don't know what he wanted with raw meat. But I can tell you this. Real horror isn't chainsaws or screaming in the woods. It's quiet. Subtle. It's a stranger in a hoodie at 11:30 p.m., asking for raw patties, and the sickening feeling that somehow he's not the only one. Story 7. I didn't think flipping burgers would follow me into adulthood, but even now, years later, I still check the corners of every room I walk into, still pause before shutting off the lights, still glance at the booths in restaurants like somebody might be crouched there, waiting. Back in 2018, I was 21, broke and out of options. My name's Daniel Harper, though back then, everybody just called me Danny. I dropped out of community college in Savannah after my second semester because I couldn't afford tuition anymore, and my parents weren't exactly in a position to help. My dad had been laid off from a paper mill job years earlier and never really recovered, and my mom was working double shifts at a nursing home. I couldn't stomach taking loans I knew I couldn't pay back, so instead I worked. I ended up at Flamehouse Burgers, a fast food joint in Pine Creek, Georgia. Pine Creek wasn't much of a town, one main street with a gas station, a Dollar Tree, a laundromat, and our restaurant sitting just off Route 49. The kind of place that truckers hit up at midnight and soccer moms swung through at 6 in the evening. I worked closing shifts mostly, 4 p.m. until around 12:30 a.m. The rhythm suited me. Fry station, clean, mop, lock up, repeat. I worked with 2 other closers, Marcus, the shift supervisor, who was 27 and always bragging about how he'd run this store one day, and Keisha, who worked the grill and had a laugh that could fill the entire lobby. We weren't friends exactly, but we were teammates. It was late October, right before Halloween, when everything happened. I remember because the windows had those tacky cling decorations of pumpkins and ghosts that peeled off if you touched them. That night had been dead, like so dead. No cars in the drive-thru for almost an hour. No customers inside since 8. We started closing early. Marcus was in the back counting the safe. Keisha was fiddling with the fryer filters, cursing under her breath as she got oil on her sleeve. I was in the lobby, sweeping under the booths and bagging trash. It was mindless, quiet work. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought my brain was playing tricks on me. The lobby was dim since half the lights were already off, but near the last booth, just past the drink machine, someone was crouched down low, pressed tight between the booth and the divider wall. He wasn't sitting like a customer. He was folded in, knees tucked, head ducked, arms close, like he deliberately tried to make himself small. My chest tightened. I hadn't heard the door chime, hadn't seen anyone come in. I froze, broom still in my hand. My first thought was, It's one of those stupid Halloween props. Somebody left it here to mess with us. Then he moved. His head jerked slightly, just enough for me to see the hood of a sweatshirt. The broom clattered out of my hands. "Hey," I said, my voice cracking louder than I wanted. "We're closed. You need to—" The man shifted, slowly standing, but not turning toward me. Skinny, maybe 5'7", 5'8" tops. Hoodie pulled tight, jeans dirty. His posture was tense, twitchy. Keisha poked her head out from the kitchen. "Danny, you good? There's someone—" My throat felt tight. "There's someone in the lobby." She frowned, wiped her hands on her apron, then froze when she saw him. "The hell—" Before either of us could say more, the man darted forward. Not out the door, not toward the exit. He ran behind the counter. Keisha gasped. "Oh no, nope, hell no. Sir," I shouted, voice shaking, "you need to leave. We're closed." The man spun toward us, eyes wild under the shadow of his hood. His voice came out sharp, desperate, cracking with something that wasn't anger but panic. "Don't come over here, I mean it. Don't come over here." That tone stopped me cold. He wasn't yelling like a guy trying to intimidate us. He sounded like someone cornered, like a stray dog about to bite. Marcus appeared from the office holding the bank bag with the night deposit. He stopped dead when he saw the scene. "What the hell is going on?" he hissed. "There's a guy," I whispered, pointing, "behind the counter." Marcus's eyes flicked from me to the stranger, then back to the rear door. "We're leaving." Now Keisha didn't even argue. She bolted. I hesitated for just a second, but then I followed. We all slipped out the back exit, the cold October air hitting my skin like ice. Marcus jumped into his pickup and peeled out of the lot. Keisha fumbled for her keys, cursing. Me? I stood there staring at the glowing red open sign, still lit in the front window. Through the glass, I could see the man pacing behind the register, yanking at it, slamming buttons, pulling with frantic jerks. My phone was shaking in my hand as I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? "There's a man inside Flamehouse Burgers," I said, trying not to hyperventilate. He was hiding in the lobby, and now he's trying to break open the register. We're locked outside. He doesn't know I'm out here. The dispatcher kept me on the line while I crouched in my Corolla, engine off, eyes glued to the window. The man never once looked outside. He just kept slamming at the drawer, muttering to himself. 5 minutes later, the first cruiser pulled up, then another. Officers went in with weapons drawn. My stomach flipped as I watched them disappear into the lobby. Minutes stretched like hours until finally they came back out, dragging the man in cuffs. He couldn't have been more than 25. Pale, twitchy, eyes darting like a cornered animal. An officer later told me they'd found a screwdriver in his pocket and a knife duct-taped under his hoodie. He'd slipped inside right before close and hidden, waiting for us to lock the doors so he'd have the place to himself. The kicker? The drawer he'd been fighting with was empty. Marcus had already dropped the money into the safe. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every time I swept under booths, I expected to see someone crouched there watching. Management tried to smooth things over. They added new closing procedures. Sweep the lobby in pairs. Lock the doors early if business was slow. But no policy erased the memory of that hooded figure curled up in the dark, waiting. I quit 2 months later. Told them it was for school. Truth was, I couldn't walk past those booths without my chest tightening, couldn't mop near the divider wall without remembering what it felt like to be the only one who saw him. And I still lock my doors twice, sometimes 3 times, because now I know. People don't always come from outside. Sometimes they're already inside, waiting. Story 8. I woke up that morning with the kind of heaviness you can't shake off with coffee or a hot shower. The kind that doesn't live in your muscles but in your chest, weighing you down like an anchor. My name's Rachel Carter, and I live in a quiet town called Millfield, tucked in the southern edge of Kentucky. Not much to brag about here. Cornfields, a Walmart, 2 churches on the same block, and a Burger King that stays open later than anything else in town. Life in Millfield doesn't come with many options. After I dropped out of community college, I took the night shift at the local warehouse just outside town. The hours ate away at me. 12 a.m. to 8 a.m., The kind of shift that makes you forget what real sunlight feels like. Nights blurred into mornings, mornings blurred into afternoons, and all the while a strange loneliness dug itself deeper into my bones. By the time I clocked out on a chilly Monday morning in March, I was starving. I hadn't eaten since the night before, and my stomach growled so loud I almost laughed. Normally, I drove straight home, collapsing into bed before the sun could fully rise. But that morning, something in me craved greasy comfort food. And in Millfield, comfort food at 8:15 a.m. meant one thing: Burger King off Route 19. Before I even left my apartment, my roommate, Angela, was already up. She worked part-time at a grocery store and was pouring herself cereal when I walked in. "You look like death," she said, eyebrows raised. "Feel like it too," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. Angela smirked, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Another graveyard shift survivor. You ever think about finding a day job?" "All the time," I said, grabbing my keys. "But bills don't pay themselves." She tilted her head. "At least eat something before you pass out." I shrugged. "I'll grab something on the way home. Burger King again?" She teased, maybe I said, forcing a smile. The roads were quiet as I headed down Route 19. The early morning light painted everything in a pale gray, the world caught between night and day. My car rattled against the cold wind, the radio mumbling some old country song that I wasn't really listening to. The Burger King sign came into view, its neon crown flickering like it was struggling to stay alive. The parking lot was almost empty, just 3 cars scattered at odd angles. I pulled in parking a few spots away from the door. That's when I noticed him, a man standing by a dark blue sedan near the far end of the lot. His posture was strange. Not relaxed, not casual, just standing, staring straight at me. I tried to shake it off. Small towns were full of odd people, and maybe he was waiting for someone. I got out, locking my car quickly. The cold air nipped at my skin as I walked toward the entrance. "Hey," a low voice called. I froze for a split second before glancing over. It was him. He was walking toward me now, slow but deliberate. "Can you help me out?" he asked, his tone too flat, too quick. I hesitated. "What do you need?" "Couple bucks," he said. "I'm stuck right now." "Gas money." His clothes looked normal enough, worn jeans, a brown jacket, but there was something in his eyes, sharp, intense, like he was scanning me. "I'm sorry," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I don't carry cash." His jaw tightened. For just a second, his face twisted. Then he smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. "That's fine," he said slowly. "Just keep an eye on your car for me, all right?" My stomach turned. The way he said it wasn't casual. It was almost like a warning. I forced a weak smile, nodded, and hurried inside. The warmth of the restaurant washed over me, the smell of fries and fryer oil wrapping around my senses. A bored-looking cashier took my order while I nervously glanced at the window, and that's when my blood ran cold. The man was standing right next to my car, his hand curled around the driver's side handle. He tugged once, twice, locked. Then he moved to the back door and tried that one too. "Everything okay?" the cashier asked, noticing my pale face. I swallowed hard. "Someone's messing with my car," I whispered. The cashier frowned, leaning forward to look. "Oh, shit." Before I could move, the man pulled something from his jacket. A blunt object, maybe a wrench or a hammer. My chest tightened. He raised it high and smashed it against the driver's window. Crash! The glass shattered, raining across the seat. A gasp rippled through the few customers inside. My legs went weak. "Call the cops!" I shouted, voice breaking. The manager grabbed the phone, dialing fast. I ducked behind the counter, my hands trembling so hard I could barely breathe. Minutes felt like hours until flashing red and blue lights painted the parking lot. By the time officers rushed outside, the man was gone, vanished into the stretch of road and farmland beyond. I gave my statement. Wrapped in a blanket, one of the workers handed me. My voice shook as I recounted every detail. The stare, the words, the sound of breaking glass. The police promised to patrol the area, but their tone told me what I already knew. In a town like Millfield, people like him could disappear without a trace. When I finally drove home, with plastic taped over the shattered window, I kept glancing at the rearview mirror. Every pair of headlights behind me made my chest tighten. Every shadow in the cornfields felt like him, watching, waiting. That night changed something in me. Now, even years later, Whenever I drive past that Burger King on Route 19, I can still hear the glass shatter. I can still see his cold, unreadable eyes. And I still wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't locked my doors?